Hello everyone, welcome to today's special Novedge webinar edition on working remotely with Vectorworks. Join us for a special Q&A with CAD Guru Jonathan Pickup and Vectorworks product specialist Neil Barman. What are the challenges of working remotely? How does Vectorworks Project Sharing make remote work possible? And more. Ask away, everything will be illuminated. And let me introduce the two gentlemen with me today. Jonathan Pickup is trained as an architect with more than 30 years of experience. He has been writing and producing Vectorworks manuals and providing customer support for more than 20 years. His company, ArchonCAD, is the premier provider of third-party manuals and training resources for Vectorworks. He offers monthly webinars for Vectorworks and maintains the Visual Knowledgebase for Vectorworks. And Jonathan today is in New Zealand, as you often or usually. And let me tell you about Neil. Neil Barman is an architect in British Columbia and a product specialist with Vectorworks Canada, providing workflow consulting, software training, and support for clients across the country. He has a deep understanding of Vectorworks and enjoys empowering others to become efficient and create more with the software. He's also co-designer of Victoria, BC's first LEED Platinum home. And one more thing, let me tell you a little bit about Novedge. Novedge is changing the way designers purchase 3D software, offering more choices, more freedom, best advice, faster service, and most importantly, no headaches. And now, and for the entire month of April, prospects, upgraders, and existing VSS customers may receive 30% discount on their Vector purchase. So check it out at novedge.com and call us anytime to find out more about this promotion. And I'm going to leave the page as is, and let's see. Let's say hi to first our two co-stars today. How are you guys?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you.
I'm very well, thank you.
All right, so as we can see, do we have questions already?
Well, the questions we've got so far tend to be, there's a couple of remote project sharing questions, which I thought Neil, you can handle those ones for me if you don't mind. But also I thought we should start off with simple stuff and work up to the more complex, if you don't mind, Neil.
That sounds good, yeah.
So one of the things that I thought we should cover, first of all, I know there are not many questions, so please, guys, if you don't write questions, it's going to be a really short webinar. And if you don't know how to write questions, ask Barbara for help, or look at the GoToMeeting control panel. There is a question box. You can click on it, bring it up. Neil, setting up your home office. You know, I've been running my home office for quite some time, and mine is a separate room, but we don't all have that luxury, do we?
No, I'm fortunate in that I have an office as well, but not everybody does, especially these days, yeah.
So my home office is set up with a good. I've got a proper desk. I've got 2 monitors. I've got a good chair. I've got a good mouse. One of the things you want to make sure you avoid at all costs is, while you're taking this opportunity to work from home, don't give yourself an injury like a wrist injury or a back injury or some other thing because you've got an uncomfortable chair or you're just trying to hunch over something. You've really got to make sure that you treat your home office like an office that is at home, not the other way around. I think you've got to take regular coffee breaks. I also think you need to treat it as if you're working in an office. So regular start time, get showered, get dressed, have a shave if that's what you need to do. Don't turn up in your pajamas whenever you feel like it. Don't fall into the habit of treating it as if no one's watching, that you can do whatever you want. You need to treat your office as a professional thing. I know my children could never quite grasp that concept. They would just come and interrupt me all the time. And it took a while for them to understand that actually I do work in an office, but my office happens to be at home. Barbara, I think we talked about this before we got started. You talked about having regular breaks. making sure that you don't overdo it.
And certainly another thing too is if you set something up like that in your regular living space, it might be hard to get away from regular life. But if you can set up some kind of divider screen just to cordon off that area, that helps. And being able to leave your material there so you don't have to clean it up at the end of the day. It also helps with just keeping things regular these days. Yeah.
I see someone's asking what should they see on the screen. At the moment, Charlie, not much, because we're talking about the sort of things that we can do rather than showing some Vectorworks things. So one of the things I also wanted to talk to you about was, Barbara, you can make my screen the presenter if you like, and I'll just show the sort of options that Neil and I talked about before we got started. So one of the things that you can do, even though you're working from home, one of the things you can still do is you can still host meetings. You can still get involved with clients, and you can still do presentations to clients using things like, I use GoToMeeting, that's my preference, but it's expensive. And if you don't need it, there are other cheaper tools available. This one seems so popular. Just about every government in the world who doesn't care about the security is using, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Lots of people are using Zoom. I'm using Zoom with my students, and it works pretty well. But there have been some reports, haven't there, Neil, about not using a password for Zoom and people being able to break into the rooms, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I
but
mean,
Zoom is free, and you can have multiple meetings.
Yeah, and it's just a little bit of common sense there too. You know, if you're setting up a meeting and you're putting out a link that's available widely, then you might get anybody coming in. So if you do want to limit it, you know, keep an eye on how you're sharing the link, put a password on there, and know your participant controls. So you can mute people, you decide who's going to share the screen. We've been using it lots. I use it quite a bit for my training, and it's been great.
Did you find the virtual background, Neil?
I use those all the time, actually. Yeah.
Well, you can put. I put Max Headroom at the back of my virtual, my virtual background, just for a bit of a laugh. But the other thing is to when you have the meeting, one of the tricks is making sure your camera is set up correctly, so that people are not looking up. Can I say that, Neil? Looking up your nose. You know that if your camera's low down and people are looking at you, they're actually looking up at your face, which is really quite awkward. You need to have your camera at eye level so that it doesn't present too badly. Recently, I had a project that I'm working on, and we had 20-odd staff. We had the boss, I had the architect, and we ran the presentation to the staff I used GoToWebinar so the staff could register. It also allowed me to mute people's microphones, so you can actually take control and mute people. And then you can make sure that you cover everybody, and you can still make these meetings really inclusive if you take control and learn how to use their software. So for me, I'm saying just carry on working. You can keep running your business.
We certainly have them, that's for sure. Yep.
So the options you've got are GoToMeeting, as we said, it was expensive. Zoom, which is free. Skype, which is free. Skype for Business, if your business has that one, you can set up meetings with Skype for Business. That works really well. It's not free. We went through, I think, Neil, you and I talked about in a range of priorities. GoToMeeting, Zoom, Skype for Business. FaceTime was the last, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've only really used that in a few cases. Just for meetings, we almost always have to share the screen because we're dealing with the software, and so it's just not as smooth for that, but yeah, there's a tool out there no matter what you need to use.
Yeah. I've always said to people that now is an opportunity to retrain. If you've got a shutdown or you've got a low period and you haven't got a job to get ready, now is a perfect opportunity to improve your Vectorworks skills. You've got Vectorworks University, haven't you, Neil?
We do, yeah. We launched that last September. And it's been fantastic. It is where now all of our getting started guides are. And
do you want to, Barbara? Would you like to make Neil the presenter, and he can show those?
Yes, I'm on it.
Okay. Yeah, we launched it last September, and that's now the new source for all of our training. Okay, I'm just going to share mine here. There we go. You should see it. There we go. So yeah, it is our main training portal now, and right when you arrive at the site, you can get started right away. Depending on what your industry is, we've got getting started guides for you, and you just click on one of those, and it'll take you right in. And you know, it's interesting. Even long-time users, I recommend it's good to go through the basics and the freeform modeling. I'm sure people will know a fair bit of it, but there are a lot of great tips in there, and because they're coming from the people who made it. You're getting a sense of how to use the software according to how we've designed it. So there's a lot of good stuff in there. And then depending on your industry, there will be either architectural, landscape design, or entertainment design modules in there. There's quite a bit on rendering, and we have just recently also released the core concepts and intermediate concepts course that you can get access to, and these are normally only available to Vectorworks Service Select members, but we want to help out with everybody's training because, as Jonathan says, and has put in his newsletters for many years, make the time to do the training. And now we've had the time made for us, so take advantage of it.
I told a story before we got started in the webinar, Neil, about one of my clients. I actually see him here, actually, but in 2008 we had a shutdown, and at that time I was saying to people, for goodness sake, take this opportunity to learn Vectorworks and to learn it really well. You've got an opportunity, you've got this fantastic opportunity at the moment to learn Vectorworks and to retrain yourself. He retrained himself in Vectorworks. He took advantage of all the resources I've made, and he redesigned his business, and he's had success ever since. He was not only the opportunity to get better at Vectorworks, but to choose the area of Vectorworks that you enjoy doing and get good at that. And that was really good.
Yeah.
So
well,
it was take this opportunity.
It was quite similar for me, actually. I'd been at offices for years, and we were actually going to be designing our own house. And it was taking a long time to do while working full-time elsewhere. And so I decided to make the leap and work on the house full-time. And at that time, I also decided, well, I keep seeing all these amazing features in the marketing material every year, but we're not using them in the offices because we never took that time to train. And I said, well, that's it. I'm going to learn how to do this. And I retaught myself using the help system, using your material, Jonathan, back from the ground up. And it was amazing. I could do so much more with the software, more accuracy, more coordination. It was fantastic. So
one of the things I keep saying is, I mean, I keep referencing a rugby team, but it's the same with a baseball team. When they have a baseball team and they go and practice every day, they don't practice all the esoteric stuff first. They practice the basics first. And my argument is we should be practicing our Vectorworks basics all the time. We always assume that because we're specialists, we don't have to practice the basics, selecting, deselecting, all that kind of stuff. But actually, those are the nuts and bolts. So, you know, you've got that basics beginner course there, the 2-hour course. Everyone should do that. Even if you think you're really good, I bet you'll learn something from that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll just go through the questions, Neil. There's someone, we've got, we'll come up to the project sharing. Is going on the cloud the best solution and how? And that's probably something I wanted to talk about, was the huge options you've got of sharing your information or storing your information in the cloud. There's so many of them, isn't there? Oh, there was one sharing thing we forgot to talk about, which I think is it Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, that one's also come along lately. That
Google Classroom, I think, is another one. But Zoom is just so easy to get started with. You need hardly anything to get started with Zoom. Dropbox, Neil.
Yep, that's what we're using. That's what I've used for my own practice. It was great. Yep, I'm still using it.
So I don't use Vectorworks has their own cloud, haven't they? I don't use that.
Well, it's a little bit different. It's not meant to be the same kind of cloud solution that Dropbox is. So it's not the same kind of thing. Yeah.
Because there was a question, and the question is file sharing question: Dropbox versus Vectorworks Cloud. We use Dropbox right now, They also integrate Paper and Slack.
Well, in terms of wider file storage and sharing, I would say Dropbox is still the way to go in that regard, because it's basically a shared syncing file storage, and so that you can set up among several team members, and you can use it quite normally like you would in your Windows Explorer, your Finder, things like that. But Vectorworks Cloud Services is a bit different in that you can store Vectorworks files there, PDFs, etc., and it's more for sharing them out or working on them yourself, but it does integrate with Dropbox, and there are instructions on the website to do that. So I'd say continuing to use Dropbox, but integrating Vectorworks Cloud Services would be good. And then at Dropbox, yes, you can use things like Paper, and Dropbox will, I believe, integrate with Slacks so that you can, links are easier to share, things like that. It's been a good solution for us. And then do take a look at all of the other things that Vectorworks Cloud Services can do, because there's presentations in there that are very easy to set up, and it's a good way to be able to present images and text. It's almost like a little PowerPoint type slide, except you're able to draw the images right from your project file itself, your model. Yeah.
Someone's just reminding me that, of course, if you got Office 365, you get 1 terabyte free storage. I forget what storage it is. Is it OneDrive? So, but there's so many of them. I don't know if I can name all of them. Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, Google Drive, Hightail Spaces, I think I used to use. There's so many of them. It actually doesn't matter. But I tell you, one of the things I was going to talk about Dropbox, Neil, I had a thing came up yesterday, the other day. I'm working with an architect. He opened the drawing. He fiddled with my drawing while I had it open, and he saved it. And there's a real danger that he deleted the work that I hadn't saved. And I think that's something else to be careful with. And if you're going to work online with somebody, I think it's then time to institute project sharing. But I think we should do project sharing at the end. Let's have a look. So we talked about 365. I see that the person who I talked about, they actually put their hand up. But I think, do you want me to tell you what do you want me to use your name? I was trying to keep you private. So are there differences when? The differences have Vectorworks should be configured when working remotely. So Richard says he doesn't care whether I use his name or not, but it was Richard, and I think it turned out really well, didn't it, Richard? In the end, using this time to learn. Okay, let's have a look. Someone was using remote sharing. We'll come back to that. Oh, Barbara, I just deleted one. It was about what were the differences between sharing. Is there a tool available to work together, drawing at the same time with a co-worker, sharing the same document in real time, not just screen sharing? Well, that would be either project sharing with Vectorworks, or the other thing to remember is that you can have things like Zoom often have annotation tools that go with them. So you can annotate on the screen and talk about what you want to do. But if you both need to work on the file at the same time, that's project sharing. And I'm going to get Neil to finish off and talk about project sharing at the end. So he can talk
although I should mention, it's not exactly real time. It's not that you'll draw a line and the other person will watch as you draw it. But it's you draw a bit and then you'll upload your changes, but it's usually within a few seconds kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that if it's a large project, certainly project sharing is the way to go. But if it's a small project and I'm working with you, Neil, and you say to me, look, Jonathan, could you just sort out that corner of the building and it's a bit naff and you need to work on it a little bit, then screen annotation tools would be the way to go. So you can actually just draw a little annotation, draw an idea. But the other thing to remember is if you're working with someone else and you want to look at their drawing and leave comments, I'm a real big believer in the redline tool. The redline tool allows you to redline an area. You can everyone's looking at your screen, Neil. Barbara, do you want to make me the presenter? I'll do the redline.
Sure.
I think the redline actually works really well.
Redline is great, and yeah, on that same note, when I'm working with somebody, I often have a class that is design notes, and so we can leave notes for each other, and we just know to switch it off before we go to make a PDF or print.
Well, don't forget that if you can set that class up as part of the viewports not to be visible.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a redline. This is the redline tool that you can make it cloudy, you can make a square. But the thing that I liked about this, Neil, was that it actually creates a report that you can then keep referring back to. And this report then tells you which things have been done, which things haven't been done, what date they were done. I use this quite often when a client phones up and they've got they want to start moving stuff around or making changes. Instead of writing it down in my book, I'll quite often open up the file and just leave red lines everywhere and leave comments like, you know, client. I usually put telecom, so I know it's a telephone conversation with a client. Client wants to move something, and now you've actually got a permanent record in your file that the client called you and asked you to do something. And when you recalculate it, it turns up in the red line sheet. And when you finished it, you can pick it up. Turns yellow. Now, it's really hard to see when it's yellow. I know some people don't like that. But the nice thing is that it jumps into the other part of the red line report. And so you can actually see when stuff's being done and when it's not being done. And I think this is really good. I think this is a good technique, Neil, for commenting on someone's drawings and seeing whether they've done the work.
Yep.
Thoroughly recommend this technique. Yeah, I think that's really cool. Let's have a look. Someone's always watching. Yeah, aren't they just? I can't. Can I move my video? Is there a tool? So I've answered that question, haven't I, Dave? The tool available for working together. I think there's more than one way to do it. You just have to look out. Someone in Florida, by the look of it, says Herman Miller gave them working chairs as a courtesy. Fantastic. That's nice. Could you outline the 3 most common methods of working remotely? 2 or 3 most common methods. I'll get Neil to talk about the project sharing. Maybe we should talk about it. Everyone seems to want to know about project sharing, Neil, but before we do that, I work remotely with an architect. I store all my files on Dropbox. He can open them. He can open my PDFs. If I make a movie, I store it in Dropbox. He can open all of that stuff. He can leave comments behind with the red line. He can take screenshots and email them to me. So that's one way. It's a pretty low-tech way of working remotely, though, Neil, isn't it?
Low tech. I mean, it's still pretty high tech. As long as you have good communication and understanding about file folders and things like that, it should be fine. But if you can do it by project sharing, that's a good way to do it.
I think the project sharing works well where 2 architects both know how to use Vectorworks really well. And I don't recommend it for beginners.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's where the permissions can come in handy, because project sharing has a number of different levels of permissions that you can set, and you'd want more experienced people to have the higher levels, admin or project level, and then maybe you'd want to kind of limit those, yeah, as you're finding there on screen.
So let's do it. I'm going to share this document. It's got to be saved, so I'm going to store it in my Dropbox. Let me just hide what I'm working on at the moment. I'll just put it on I should really put it in my Dropbox so I can share it with other people. And I'll just store it somewhere in my EIT folder. So someone had a question, which of these should I choose? SBM, AFP, which one, Neil?
Well, I think more and more, if I'm not mistaken, more and more is moving towards SMB, because I believe AFP is going away, but this will depend. You want to talk to your IT folks and find out if you're working off of a server. You want to find out what protocol they've used, and there are instructions that we've got at Vectorworks that can help with that. But I usually switch it to SMB as of late. Okay, and SMB, is that better with Dropbox?
I
don't know if it makes a difference with Dropbox, actually. I usually just switch it to SMB and then hit the next button there, and it'll walk you through the other setup options. So this is where you get to pick the permissions.
I don't know if I've got anyone. I don't know if I can add you, Neil. We used to work. We've done a couple of things together. So I'm gonna. I'll just add Neil. Oh, so I just added you, Neil. You're a project guy, but I can actually say you're administrative. You can do everything, or you're a beginner, like my boss. You're a read only, and now he can't fiddle around. He can't modify anything, and he can't accidentally delete stuff, which he used to do in the old days, and then say, no, I didn't touch it. I'd say, but I locked it. I locked that thing. You couldn't have done it by accident.
So that's where you just have to speak with your colleagues, your collaborators, and say, you know, find out how much control they need and set up the permissions accordingly.
If you don't have the ability, so for example, you can say layers restricted where they can modify the contents of existing layers, great, but they can't delete or create layers, and they can't edit resources, which means they can't make hatches, they can't edit hatches, they can't make textures, they can't make anything. You're in charge of making all of that, so the administrator can do all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and if you already have some office resources that you use, then that could be a good way to do it. That way they're not just making their own items on the fly.
So these are things that, master layers are things that don't change very often. So don't just tick them all. Create a backup copy. So in now it's starting to, you're getting something that's a bit more like your autosave. And when we finish, so what you'll notice when I finish this is that instead of having a real Vectorworks document, what I've got is a working file. So any work I do in this file has to be sent to my project file. And I do that by going save and commit, and it commits my changes. Any changes I've made then get sent to the project file, and then anyone else who's working on this project, like Neil, can then download those changes.
Yeah, in fact, you will get a little notification in the just above left of your drawing area, and it will show you that there are some changes to come in, and you can refresh your file, and those changes will arrive.
Yeah, you get this changes color, doesn't it? It gets a little star or something.
Yeah, it gets a little triangular notification up there.
Someone's got a Dropbox. Oh, you've talked about Dropbox. Regarding file sharing, is it good not to have the project file turn into a single Vectorworks file once the project is done? I don't have a strong thing on that.
Well, I'd say once the project is done and you want to archive it, yeah, you might as well just switch it back to a regular Vectorworks file and archive it. You can, if you need to bring it back up again and have the team work on it again, you can turn it back into a project file again. But I usually, in the few that I've done, I usually just turn it back into a regular Vectorworks file at the end. Yeah.
Someone's asked, is going to the cloud the best solution and how? I've been using cloud storage for donkey's years now. I can't remember how long I've been using Dropbox for. One of the things I like about Dropbox is every time I have to change computers, you know, I used to be obsessive. Do you remember, Neil? I used to be obsessive about backup drives. I do. Yes. I've probably got a dozen of them lying around, and I haven't been obsessive since I've gone to Dropbox, because Dropbox always backs up. So one of the couple of things that I like about some sort of online storage is that, number one, it backs up. If anything happens to your computer, if you burn out your hard drive, and I have lost some hard drives, it cost me $1,500 to have one forensically restored. They actually took it to a room and they took the platters apart. They put the platters back into a new container. It cost me $1,500 now to get my business, all my business books, which weren't stored online. From now on, everything's stored online. But if anything happens to my computer, all I need to do is to install Dropbox, and I can download any. I can have all my files. If I go to a computer and I want to get something, I don't have to install Dropbox. I can sign in on a web browser and download anything. And if I want to share anything with any client, I can share them a Dropbox link and they can download anything. And I did that I did that yesterday. Someone wanted one of my manuals from LinkedIn, and I shared that link, and he's got my manual now. So Box does it, OneDrive does it, Google Drive does it. All of these things do it, and it's just a great way of having your files available wherever you go. It works really well.
Yeah, that availability and the redundancy, because these machines do go from time to time, and it's amazing to have the backup right there.
I don't know if anyone's ever run over their computer by leaving it in the driveway. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah, there are lots and lots of options. Now, Neil and I are not experts on which one you should choose. You can have, I actually, for a time, Neil, I don't know if you remember, but I had a device I actually connected to the internet. I plugged in a hard drive, and I had my own hard drive cloud storage system. And I've gone away from that because it was just too much trouble to maintain it. So I think there's quite a, maybe there's a, Neil, you should come back and do a cloud storage thing. There's lots and lots of questions about the cloud storage. Can you see all these, Neil?
I can, yeah. And one thing, yeah, I see a few questions about this, but about when you do use project sharing in Dropbox, the idea is that you will keep your project file on Dropbox in a folder that syncs back and forth between your computer up to Dropbox and down to others. But your working file that you save off of there, ideally you would keep that on your own computer, because really it's just kind of essentially a temporary file that you can do your work in. You save the changes, you release, you commit, etc. And those changes go to the project file, and then your working file is effectively disposable. The project file is really the true source of all the info. And that's what you want to have syncing back and forth. But your working file can stay on your own hard drive.
And one of the techniques I use, and it's not using project sharing, Neil, but I put my initials at the end of the file when I'm working on it. I work with someone who's in America, and so I'm a day ahead. So what I tend to do, I'll work on the file. He'll say, I want you to do this work. I'll do the work, and then I'll save the file. Then he'll pick up the file and put his initials at the end of it. And then I know that if I see a file with his initials, he's working on that file, he's got possession of it, and I'll wait till he's finished with it, and then I'll pick up that file and work on it. And that may not be the best way to go, but that's the way that he's very happy to work. He likes to get in the file and move stuff around, and when he's doing that, I need to know and I keep away from it. So that's one of the things that we do. Can we just back up our server? Absolutely, you can do that one.
Yep. I'll just mention, Jonathan, too, about the initials thing. Before we had project sharing, that was something that was done by a lot of offices. It just means setting up a protocol like that, where you have an understanding between people. You might have things in a different folder if you're not using references, maybe an in-use folder versus a main folder. As long as you're communicating with your team about what you're doing, it should be fine.
So someone's picked up on this, and what's the benefit of workarounds like initials over communication instead of project sharing? It's such a small office. There's really only one person, and I'm helping out temporarily. So I'm not actually physically part of that office. So I would use that technique. But if it was something where there was more than one person constantly working on the project, I would go to project sharing. But if it's a small project where the boss just wants to see the way the drawings look, well, why not just print the PDFs or publish the PDFs and send those and get, as someone said, I think Richard said something like old-fashioned, but I'm the only one that manipulates the file, and the client architect marks up PDFs, photographs them and sends them back. Or he could just mark up the PDFs with an iPad and send them back easily enough. And Richard, also you can use online discussions with that at the same time as well, where they say, oh, that door's not working, you need to fix that. So the answers really depend on what you're doing and what your situation is. But I think before we run out of too much time, this is a really good opportunity to expand your use of Vectorworks. I don't know if you weren't here the other day, Neil. I did. You can still see my screen?
Yes.
I've moved the Command P. I don't print anymore. All I do is publish. So I changed the Command P to publish, and because I do it, I don't need to print. That is an instant way of creating your PDF. So taking the time to learn how to customize your Vectorworks to make things quicker for you is a great opportunity you've got right now. Customize your Vectorworks, learn how to create these little tools that I've created. They're fantastic. I was having trouble selecting something the other day, Neil, So I made a selection where it will select my animation path. So I can double click on it and it'll actually find my animation path wherever it is. These little techniques, they really speed you up when you start drawing. Learn how to make them. This is a great opportunity to learn. And Gabrielle, if you need to learn, get in touch with me later on. But it's, Neil, I don't know if you customize too much. I've got to be careful when I teach people, because if I use my customized workspace, it's.
What I find when I'm training is usually in the beginning I keep people at the default settings, absolutely, because that's what all the training material will refer to. Most other people will have their default settings as well. So if somebody says, well, what key do you use for that? It will be the same across them. But yeah, we've built in the workspace editing. So by all means, when you get more comfortable with the application, change it as you need to. It's very easy to do, as Jonathan's showing there, and it does make it faster for you, for sure.
It's so fast, and if you're learning, if you're going back to Vectorworks and learning, start with the fundamentals. It gets rid of a whole lot of stuff you don't need to know, and you can gradually work up to things like the architect. This is, of course, this is an Australian New Zealand version, so I've got Windor in it. But I've also created my own, and you'll notice, Neil, that my basic tool palette's got some weird stuff in it, like the revision cloud and the 3D extract tool. I use them a lot. Just put them where it's easy to find. Get rid of the tools you don't use and put in the tools you need a lot. Someone wants to know, what's the future of open cloud-based project sharing? I couldn't even begin to answer that one. I can't even tell you what my country's going to do next week, but let's go back through. So Richard said, if you can't, are you reading some of these questions?
Yeah, and I've tried to remove some of them that we've already answered. There were some questions about where to keep the files, and I think I've covered that one, that the project file would be the one that sits on the server or sits on Dropbox and synchronizes, and your working file you keep locally. That tends to be the smoothest. In some cases, we have had people where they create their working file and then they also save that to the server. That just means that as you're doing your work and saving your changes, it has to communicate across your network. And it's hard to know what your network is like. If your network is experiencing a lot of traffic, that may be slow, and it might seem like it's Vectorworks, but it's really just the network. So working file, keep it local.
So Gabrielle, if you want to talk about customization, get in touch with me remote after this, and we'll have a chat about it. If you're using Skype, my company is ArchonCAD. Barbara will give you my details if you need them.
Absolutely.
So Neil, just to go over it, what did you say you store the project file on Dropbox and the working file on your local computer? Yeah,
because the project file is the one that needs to synchronize up to Dropbox in the cloud and then synchronizes with other people on their machines. Yeah. It's not the working file that you need to have doing that. The working file just connects locally with the version of the project file that you have. That's where the connection is.
So someone's asking, do you keep your actual file on your hard drive or keep it all in the cloud? So one of the Dropbox does both. Dropbox actually stores it on your local hard drive and then in the background synchronizes it with the cloud. So if you disconnect your computer from the network, you still have it.
Yes, and one advantage we've found with Dropbox is one of their settings is that they have a local sync. So may not apply in this case because none of us are actually all in the same offices right now, but if you have that option on, Dropbox will look around your local network to see if the file can be synchronized there to your colleagues, and it will do that first. So that speeds up the connection even just a little bit more.
So there's a question here for you, Neil. If the main file was created on the server and is in the office, and I have the working file on my laptop, if I decide to work from home on the laptop, how could I convert the file to become the main file? And I can work and save. It keeps telling me I could not work on it since it's offline. I think this is a technical problem that you need to understand the difference between a project file, don't call it the main file, it's the project file, and the working file. You need to understand how those two relate to each other. My understanding is you can't turn a working file into a project file straight away, you can probably save it as a file and then make that the project file. But it sounds to me like you need to understand what project sharing is all about, and don't get into it until you've learned about it, please.
Yes, exactly. And it sounds like in that situation, maybe the project file was originally on a server, the working file was made and then taken away, and there is no active connection between those two files right now. So when the working file wants to check items in or out of the project file, it can't find it. In a case like that, some people have set up VPN connections so that it seems like they're on the network that has the server and the original project file. But again, VPN connections have different speed levels, and it will depend on many more network things. So your mileage will vary in terms of that one.
I think you need to understand the structure of these before you start making them. It sounds really easy to make them, and it is, if you understand the way that these things talk to each other. But I think that I think you need to have some understanding of what project sharing is first, so that you can get into it. I think one time we actually looked at doing a webinar on it, Neil, didn't we? On setting it up. Did we do a webinar on it?
No, we chatted about it, and we did some tests, and it all went well. I mean, given our distance and everything, it was fine. And I will often demo it for clients, and I have a simple one here that I can give them access to, and then they open it up, and I will make some changes here, just some simple changes. I'll change the shape or the size or the color, and they can see how the whole system works. And also at Vectorworks University, we do have a course called Referencing and Project Sharing 2020. And
you want to bring that up, Neil?
Yeah, I've got that one up now. So switch to
Barman just needs to make you the presenter.
Yeah, for sure. And so in there, it goes through the different kinds of referencing and project sharing sort of best practices that we've got here.
I don't know where Barbara's. Hold on, can I make
No,
you the
I'm here.
presenter?
Yes,
There we
I'm
go.
sure. It's taken a while. I muted
There we
myself because it turns out that the Hells Angels are outside my window. So it's really loud.
So here I'm taking a look at Vectorworks University again. And what I've done is I've just searched for project sharing up here on the filter bar. That's the only one that I entered there. And so here you'll get, on the left side, you'll get an intro to project sharing, which is definitely good to go through. It'll give you a sense of things. And then inside this one, Referencing and Project Sharing 2020, I'll go right in there. And it has a few courses. One on the two different kinds of referencing that we've got. We've got layer import referencing and design layer viewports. The latter is used a little bit more, but both still have their place. And then a course on project sharing. And so, yeah, I would definitely take this time to read through it, because it's important to know about the permissions, the save and commit, close and release method, how often you want to do that. If you're used to saving your file quite often after every few moves, on your own computer, you don't necessarily want to be saving and committing quite that often, because it's then pushing your changes back to one file and synchronizing it again, which just creates more traffic. So you do want to read about it. It works really nicely. I haven't had any troubles with it, but I did read about it before I got into it.
Someone's asked a question, Neil, must project permissions be set up in each file, or can that information be included in a template? I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I believe I haven't had anybody set up a project file template. Usually they'll start up a project from a template, because it has all of your information there. And then I'd have to look into that. I don't think it can be saved in a template, but
Lee, do you want to get in touch with Neil direct and ask him that question?
Oh, was that Lee?
It was Lee.
Yeah, I could look into that for you, certainly. I've also popped open here just the help information. Built into our help system is a whole area on project sharing. So it goes through the concept. It explains what it works with, gives you some diagrams about how it works, and then a number of other subsections on that.
Is it wise to have more than one administrator? Absolutely.
Yes.
But I got a warning here. Don't let someone who doesn't know what they're doing be an administrator. You've got to have two people who really understand what they're doing to be an administrator. Why do I say more than one? Because I know a case where there was only one administrator and he got sick and no one else could administer the file without him. And the login for these project files, the login is connected to your computer. So if I log into a project sharing from my Windows machine, I'll log on as one user. But if I go to my Windows machine and log on to the same file to share that one, that's a different user. It's a different username. So do be a little bit careful, because I jumped from one machine to the other, Neil, without worrying about it. So I'm just trying to get rid of some of these questions.
Yeah.
Richard was saying that you can have a battery-powered surge protector so you don't lose things as I said, I've been using Dropbox for so long, I've stopped being so obsessive about it. I think we've talked about the benefits of workarounds like initials over in project sharing. We talked about that. What size of project is enough to share with two people? Two people working collaboratively is the minimum size required for project sharing. If there's only one person working on the file, you don't need project sharing. So Gabrielle, but the two people have to be working actively in the file, making changes. And I don't call working collaboratively an architect telling you to move a door. They could do that just by pointing their finger or during an online webinar. They can mark up PDFs. Richard goes through marked up PDFs. I would say that they have to be working collaboratively, actively working in that file. That would be my answer. I don't think you've got
I mean, not really. I mean, with the different levels of permissions, I'm actually helping an office right now where one of the senior architects has a lot of experience with Vectorworks and is on there as an admin. Some of his newer staff are in there, one person mainly, and they're doing the main amount of work. He just pops in every now and then, but they've set it up as a project sharing file just so that he can get in there and work on it because he knows what he's doing. He's not that active in it, but it does mean that they can safely go in there and check things out, make comments to each other, things like that. And I think there was one question in the list as well about how can people tell what somebody has checked out. And there is actually a little tool up along the mode bar on the right side. You can go into the quick prefs, and there are some project sharing options. And one of those, you switch that on, and items will be shown highlighted in the color of the user. So when you're setting up the project sharing options, each user gets a color, purple, orange, red, what have you. And those will actually appear in your drawing so you know who is working on what.
Oh, I see that. Yeah, you can highlight objects that I have checked out. You can highlight objects using colors, so you can actually have people. So when people have checked out a wall, it'll turn in a different color than normal. That's quite a handy way of doing it.
Yeah.
So someone said that they're using project sharing remotely and finding a little challenging keeping collaborative drawings updated with unstable connections. So my suggestion is make sure that you store your working file on your local computer. Don't store it over some network system. And then, as Neil said earlier on, only update or only save and commit once in a while when you've done something substantial. Now, I'm used to saving all the time. I'm saving my working file all the time every time I've moved something. But it might be that you need to save and commit when you've done something substantial. Now, you can be working collaboratively with someone, and they may not need to see your changes for 15 minutes or an hour at a time. Then don't update it all the time like that. Just update it when it's really necessary. But if, for example, Neil, you were moving the walls and I was managing the ceiling drawing, we'd want to make sure that we were making those save and commits much more frequently. Because if you moved a wall, I'd want to see it straight away. Yes. But if I was working on the first floor and you're working on the second floor, well, fine. We don't need to. I can work for ages without you having to see what I've done. Unless it comes to moving stairs.
Yeah, so it depends on what you're working on, and certainly using project sharing is not a replacement for communicating with your colleagues. So if you're doing something like that where you're moving walls, you're working kind of on the same area and you need to see what each other's doing, Normally you could chat in an office, otherwise have some kind of communication tool up, or call them on the telephone and say, okay, I've made my changes, I've saved and committed, go ahead, I'm going to take a break for 20 minutes, do your work, keep chatting otherwise. There is a method for adding comments when you make changes, a method right in Project Sharing. There's a function for adding the comments, so you can say, I moved all the walls around the kitchen area, things like that. Use that if you need to.
So there's no substitute for having an office meeting at first thing in the morning and saying, let's have a Zoom meeting. What are we working on today? Well, I've got to fix that stair. I've got to fix that detail. Like, I mean, it's the projects I'm working on, I can spend weeks on detailing, and those details have no impact on what someone else is doing somewhere else in the file. So you don't need to be committing, but Neil's right. You need to have some sort of talk. What about having a 9 a.m. Zoom meeting to get started, and then a lunchtime Zoom meeting? Why don't you have lunch together or something? Where you can. It could be a bit noisy, both chomping away, but maybe you have lunch and then you have a let's talk about what we're doing this afternoon. Yeah. Someone's asked about experience sharing permissions with freelancers. How much do you trust them?
Well, if you're trusting a freelancer to do your design work, you really should, or your drafting, you really should be trusting them. So that's a tough call. Certainly make backups all the time. It's good to get some of their files in advance to see how they've used Vectorworks, to get a sense of their skill level, because it's not always just a matter of the amount of time you've used it. It's how you're actually using it. If you've got an office template, make sure that they're working off of that, so at least you have a base level of understanding. If Mariella is referring to the actual project sharing permissions, if you're having somebody else help out on a project shared file, that's where you take a look at that permissions list, and you might want to limit it to one of the options towards the bottom, not quite read-only, of course, but the one where they're able to add items and change items, but not change layers and classes and resources and things like that. So it might be one of the more limited ones. This project sharing information, it will go through permissions, and you can see what will work best for somebody who you don't know as well.
I've got to come back to trust, Neil. If you don't trust them, then why are you employing them?
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes you're in a pinch and you need somebody to get the work done, but I'd say, just like with a project, interview them as much as you can. Interview clients and designers, interview each other, get to know each other as much as you can, because you're getting into a relationship, and especially when it's your business is depending on their work, you really do have to trust them. Yeah.
Someone's suggesting making sure that the freelancers you employ have got their own legal copy of Vectorworks. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And if they're making money selling Vectorworks techniques or Vectorworks skills, they've got to have their own copy. They can't be using yours. I think it's probably time to start wrapping up. It looks, Neil, like we spent most of the time talking about project sharing. I don't know if Barbara wants to organise it or whether you want to organise one, Neil, but it looks like a webinar might be useful on project sharing.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. Well, stay tuned. Hopefully we'll make it happen.
So, Neil got a chance to promote the Vectorworks University, which if you want to look at that, I'm so happy for you to have that. Of course, I've been building my own resources for such a long time, and you can find me on my YouTube channel. And Barbara's got, I think, stuff on me.
Yes, I'm on it. I'll make you the presenter immediately.
Switch over there.
Yeah.
So I think it's time that we wrapped up, but one of the things I did do a quick search for was how to sit properly at a computer. Please don't forget this sort of basic, making sure you look after yourself type stuff. It's so easy to forget about this when you're sitting at your dining table. I've got a student who's hurt their back, and it's affecting them every day. Don't fall into that trap. We've looked at GoToMeeting, we've looked at Zoom. So this is my store for online courses. I've got online courses there. I've built this knowledge base, Neil. This has got all my notes on project sharing. I actually find that the knowledge base is now really easy to look out for. But you've got to be a subscriber. If you don't want to subscribe to my site, that's fine. Look at my YouTube channel. There's hundreds of movies here. I was telling Neil before we got started, I've recently posted my 2017 Vectorworks Fundamentals course. So if you want to learn Vectorworks, you want to learn it from the ground up, and you've done the Vectorworks University, but you want to do it again, why not try my one? Or if you've done my one, try the university. If you hear the same thing from two people, you'll hear it from different ways. Try learning more of it. I've posted my Architect Asia course, my concept modeling. This one here has turned out to be extremely useful, or popular, I should say, Neil. The Getting Started, where I build stuff using the SketchUp type concept. So to teach people the automatic working planes, how you can push, pull, and extrude, and treat Vectorworks very much like SketchUp. There's some new movies, and of course, don't look at my scooter movies. I'm just having fun with those. It's just me having a goofing off. But I certainly suggest that you look at my Vectorworks Fundamentals course, the concept modeling, which some of these have got really odd new ways of looking at your Vectorworks, and you might learn something and be able to expand your use of Vectorworks. So please, they're free. Just go and have a look at them.
Definitely, and taking this time to do the training, it will benefit all of your future projects. It's we're forced into this position, so let's make the best of it. And we're doing what we can to help out as well. All of our Architect, Landmark, Spotlight, Essentials courses, which are normally pay to view, we've made them all free. So you can find those on our training calendar as well at the Vectorworks website. So we're just all helping out.
Yeah, and
so let me have a look. So Vectorworks, do you want me to show everyone how to get there, Neil? Someone asked a question about what was the URL. So I'm going to vectorworks.net. Here it comes. It's just gracefully creeping across.
Thank you, Jonathan, for doing that.
Here we are. Where do I go next, Neil?
Should be under support. Let's see here.
Support.
Oh, it's taking a little while to load there.
Oh, getting started guides. Click there.
There we go. Training. Try the training link over on the training. Oh, that takes you right to the university. Further down that page will be a training calendar link, and that's where you can go for those.
So yeah, getting started. Is that easy enough to find that? So
so that will take you to the
Learn Vectorworks. One of the things I didn't say, Neil, was that when we mentioned Richard, he said he did take the opportunity in 2008 when we had that last recession. He's been busy ever since. He's still busy now, and he's still really enjoying his Vectorworks. So take the opportunity to retrain. Learn how to have fun with Vectorworks. Make it a fun thing to do, so you look forward to using Vectorworks every day. And I've got to go and get ready for another webinar, Neil, because I'm doing site modeling in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I don't want to hold you guys more than I know your time is precious, and I want to switch back to my slide. I want to thank you again, and my take today, I think, is my takeaway is learn your basics and learn project sharing before you do anything with it, right? And also, as Jonathan said, there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of free video on YouTube, but also consider subscribing, because Jonathan is like the Netflix for Vectorworks. So a lot of stuff, and it's very convenient. So I won't say no more. And thank you again, Neil. I'll reach out to you for a potential Novedge webinar on project sharing step by step, which is.
Thanks for having me here today.
Yes, and here's where you can find Vectorworks on our webpage, novedge.com. There's a phone number. Feel free to call us anytime, especially during the month of April. where we have a special for Vectorworks where you can save 30%. There's 0 exclusion, so probably everybody qualifies. So thanks again for joining us today. It's been wonderful to chat.
Thank you for having me, Barbara, and another special thanks. Thank you, Neil, for coming along and helping out. It was really fun to catch up with you again.
It was.
Great chemistry between the two of you.
We've worked together a little bit, haven't we, Neil?
We have, yeah.
Okay, have a rest. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.